Hi and welcome again to another episode on my channel. Today I want to talk about a technique I call the iridescent ground technique. I'm sure I'm not the person who came up with this. Someone somewhere must have come up with this before me, but I kind of stumbled on it by accident by playing, and I kind of like the effect that I got, so I use this some of the time now. In acrylic painting, we will very often paint the entire canvas or paper with a coloured ground like yellow ochre, just to give us something warmer to paint on so that we can look at our colours in a much more realistic way. So for example, if I was painting a seascape, I might paint the whole canvas with yellow ochre or a warm brown of some kind, and then when I start painting over that with blue, I'm looking at different shades of blue against this warm yellow-brown background rather than against a pure white, and that means I can judge the colours a little bit better. By the end of the painting, the whole ground is completely obliterated, you can't see any of it. So it doesn't actually matter in terms of the finished painting, but it helps with the process. So it's kind of a waste of paint in that you don't see any of it. So I don't use expensive paints, but I use good enough paints that it's not going to suddenly peel off. I wouldn't use something from the Simply range, for example, but I will use something of reasonably good quality. So what I usually buy is from the Graduate range from Dale and Rowney, their titanium white acrylic paint. This comes in a 120ml tube, and these are a few pounds. So it's a lot cheaper than taking Acrylic or System 3 paint and pouring that enough to cover a whole canvas, for example. So what I would normally do is take this and mix it with a warm yellow or a brown or something like that and give me a suitable ground to paint the whole background with. So when I do that, this cuts down the price significantly. By accident, I picked up another tube that is on my shelf of pearl white in the Graduate range. This is something you can only get in the Graduate range. You can't actually get this in the more expensive ranges. And what this is a titanium white that contains coated mica. So you can see there it's titanium dioxide, which is pigment white 6, and coated mica. So this is a kind of sparkly white paint. It's titanium white with added bling, effectively. And by mixing this, you'd get slightly different results because you tend to get a slightly warmer result for a start, but you get that iridescence, and that can mean that as you're painting you can achieve different effects. And I've tried also mixing this in as an alternative to titanium white in the painting, and you can get some quite cool results. So I just did a little trial where I took Cad Yellow Deep Hue from the System 3 range. This is heavy body, black cap here. It's colour 618, and it contains diarylamide yellow, pigment yellow 83, and this is a transparent colour. If I go back to wrong way round, if I go back here, this titanium dioxide white is an opaque white, and the pearl white is a transparent white because it doesn't have as much titanium dioxide in the mix. It is a little bit weaker. So that means when you mix these in equal volume with the yellow, the one where you use pearl white will come out more yellow because you haven't added as much white pigment to the mix, but the iridescence is there, and you can get a lovely even warmer ground than you would get just by using white paint alone. So here on this sheet of System 3 acrylic paper from Dale and Rowney, I have painted as follows: 618 Cad Yellow Deep Hue, which is diarylamide yellow, pigment yellow 83, with either 011 titanium white from the Graduate range or 020 pearl white from the Graduate range. And these are the results I get. So just by using titanium white, you get this quite flat but quite warm yellow. And I'm going to bring it closer so you can see it. It's got pretty good coverage. And what I did is I smeared it on with a palette knife, and then over here I did kind of a bit more of a sort of impasto technique, and that shape looks awfully feminine, shall we say. I did not intentionally do that. That's just the edge of the palette knife, and I'm really sorry about that. This is meant to be PG-13. Oh well. And over here I used the pearl white, and I don't think the camera is going to pick this up too well because iridescence never shows too well when you're trying to pick it up on camera. But what I have got here, and you're going to have to take my word for it, is this warm, not quite sparkly, but slightly glowing, warm gold paint instead. So rather than this very pale, subtle cream, I've got a warm gold that has an inner luminescence and iridescence and a beautiful sheen to it in comparison. So over here, if I can try and get my lighting right, this paint is quite not shiny. This paint, very shiny. So it could be a nice way to get a slightly different effect with your ground. So what I'm going to do is just take a bit of Cobalt Blue Hue, which is from the System 3 range, normal body, white cap here. This is an opaque blue containing pigment blue 29, which is ultramarine blue, and pigment white 6, which is titanium dioxide. So this Cobalt Blue Hue is really ultramarine mixed with white. So you could just buy ultramarine, mix it with white, and get exactly the same result. But what I wanted to do was just rub a bit of it over both of these different grounds and show you what kind of effect you can get. Because what happens is you still see some of the binder has come off there. So I'm just going to mix this in. You won't be able to see what I'm doing very well at the moment, but I'm going to lift it up to the camera so you can see. In this first coat, even though it's an opaque paint, I'm going to put it on very thin. And by doing that, you'll be able to see a bit of the yellow through it. So as you build up the layers, that yellow would disappear. But as you go, the luminescence and warmth you get from behind is really helpful, especially if you're doing something like a sunset. It can be a good guide to how to get the lighting right in the upper layers. And you could also, in your upper layers, just mix in some pearl white and get some interesting effects. So I'm not aiming for brilliant coverage here. We're looking at relative colour. We're looking at how does this cobalt look on the two different backgrounds. And actually on the pearl white mix, it feels more blue. It feels more of a sea blue than a deep blue. It feels lighter. You can see the background or the ground through it, but there you go. You've got lovely coverage there, and you can see how it looks. And over here, you've got some of that iridescence and play showing through. So that can be quite interesting if you're trying to achieve a warm feeling rather than just a sort of standard background. Let me just throw my brush into the disgusting water I've got here. I've been painting gouache for the last week and I haven't bothered changing my dirty water, so it's absolutely disgusting. So I'm trying to get the brush nice and paint free, or as good as I can, before I can fully wash it. But there you go, a little technique for making an iridescent ground. Try it out and see how you get on with it. It can be a really interesting thing to do if you just want to warm up and enliven a warm ground and give it a bit more inner luminescence, or it could be something you want to use on the last layer, perhaps if you were doing a stormy sea, just to give the breaking waves a little bit of inner reflectance without having to add a pearlescent medium as well as adding white. So it can be a cheap and economical way to do that. Word of warning, it's not an artist grade paint. I cannot guarantee that it will last forever. However, it is rated 3-star for permanence, which is pretty much what you're going to get from any of the System 3 paints. I don't know if the Acrylic have got any higher permanence. I've just got a tube. Acrylic, okay, a 4-star permanence. So it's not quite as good for permanence, but hey, 3-star or 4-star are going to be pretty much the same thing for most applications. So give it a try, see how you get on. Thank you very much.